Summer is well and truly heating up in more ways than one, and today we are discussing the Club World Cup. There's been very many critics, both good and bad, but today we're going to get into it with three things we love about it, and of course, three things we absolutely hate about it. Let's kick things off on a positive note. Jamie, we'll come to you first. Give us something so far that you are loving about the Club World Cup.
Yeah, first of all, obviously, like my team's in it, so it does make it a bit more interesting. But the one thing I'm so excited about is just seeing the new signings. I don't need to wait, and I don't need to see sort of like 45 minutes against sort of like it's sort of like half-assed teams in a way. It's we're seeing full strength teams how they actually will fit in for the next coming season. So for me, obviously, we've got Cherky, got Reinders, Eight Nori. It's quite good to see how they're going to fit into the team and how Pep wants to use them. Because Pep could quite easily go, Eight Nori at left back, actually, you're inverting. But actually, we're seeing him a bit more wide. So it's quite interesting to see the sort of tactics in play of sort of personnel. Whereas before, you might have seen a right or left back for us come into the middle. So things like that I think is really interesting and exciting for sort of me because I don't have to wait several months from a good early signing to seeing how they actually fit in with the City team.
100%. And it's true. Like by default, you're gonna put more effort in tactically than in a competitive game where there's maybe 10 million on the line. And as you said, some preseason friendlies, some nice little tour where, after 30 minutes, you're doing 12 changes, which we sometimes see in some of those preseason games. So that's definitely true with the new signings. Reese, what are you liking so far about the Club World Cup?
I'm enjoying the fact that we're seeing teams who don't normally play each other or haven't played each other before. Yes, I'm sure a lot of these teams have crossed paths in pre-season friendlies, but they've provided some very competitive matchups along the way, which I think deserves a little bit of recognition than it's getting. If we look at, Palmeiras versus Porto, for example, yes, they may have the tie of both speaking Portuguese, but they're never going to play each other, are they? And it turned out to be quite a competitive game, even though it was a nil-nil and Porto are the team from Europe. We've seen, Botafogo beat PSG, for example, which was also just as important. So we're seeing teams who don't normally play. The only thing we ever see amongst these teams is the European teams signing the players from these teams. So we've seen something different. We've seen teams that we get to enjoy. And as you mentioned, it's a competitive setting. So they're not just here for a kickabout. Yes, some teams may not be valuing it as much as others, but we're seeing these teams go toe to toe with one another, and we're actually getting to see what teams are made of. Like I said, I've been impressed by Botafogo. I've certainly been impressed by Palmeiras, who are made it into the last 16. So it's a really good opportunity for teams to put themselves out there, and it's a good opportunity for teams to really showcase their talent, and with the money on offer, allow them to grow. And I think that's what's been really important in this competition that I don't think gets said enough. I mean, even alone in the last 16, we've had 16 goals already, haven't we? We've still got a couple of games to go. I think that's a very good win. I think that's a very good win for the competition. So yeah, fingers crossed that more goals come in. These haven't really been nil-nils, so more to it.
I do agree with that. Sort of like there are some sort of bigger teams that are not in Europe, sort of thinking like River Plate, Boca Juniors, for example. They're teams that sort of people have them on like a sort of like a checklist of teams they want to go and see. So this is quite a good opportunity to see actually how they play in sort of more a competitive standing than maybe being able to catch some of the highlights or some of the matches in their league where they actually you don't know what the opposition's like. So the opposition could be crap, but you don't really know it because you don't know that league as well as you sort of know your own supporting club. So seeing these teams in a competitive standing point is quite enjoyable to see. And you also get sort of, I guess, some of the sort of stories mainly through sort of what was it, Auckland, you know, scoring a goal in this competition, which was pretty much probably their aim. You know, they got battered in their games, but to actually score a goal is sort of like the I know, fairy tale sort of story that you got, which you wouldn't get ever because they wouldn't really ever play each other.
Yeah, look,
And
people want to criticize that at the end of the day. People want to say, oh, it makes a mockery of the competition. I don't think it does. I enjoyed watching 10-0. Like how many are they going to score? Can Benfica score more? They were holding their own Auckland City against Benfica. They didn't lose the third game. So, like, we've seen literary progress for them in the tournament. The players have had the experiences of their lives, and the clubs earn more money than they're ever going to earn. So, I don't think that's a mockery at all. I think that's a great story. Like,
there's,
I see that as a positive, not a negative.
there's no point calling it a Club World Cup if you can't have a representative from each continent at the very least. And Auckland City have done themselves proud, and it's put them on the map. Like, I knew a team called Auckland City existed, but I knew that the A League had Wellington Phoenix. So in a way, it's given them the opportunity in life and life-changing money and made them all, celebrities back in their homeland. And it grows the game. There's no point growing the game in countries where the game is already at its best. You know, grow it in places where there's the market to grow, and that's what it's been. And I'd argue that it's been reflected in the attendances as well. Over the group stages alone, it's been over 1.6 million people that attended. We can talk about the issue in Atlanta, Georgia, as much as we want, but 1.6 million is a lot to attend. Yes, these are big stadiums, but you bearing in mind that, these are happening during work days and different times to us. People are going, there's a hunger for it. And that's because you're getting exciting matchups. You're getting matchups, like I said, you're not going to see anywhere else. Yes, we're going to get some European teams play each other or teams from the domestic league, but that's good because there's still jeopardy on it. But I know that there are huge skeptics over this competition. I've seen it when I posted in support on TikTok, of course. So those of you that don't follow, give us a follow on TikTok. Even the biggest skeptics will always have something to say. So Jordan, even though you have been quite supportive of it, would you argue that having football on is better than no football anyway, or would you rather just stick to the traditional pre-season friendlies? Yeah, what method do you prefer?
Yeah, look, this is definitely for me been one of the good things. Like we sit here and talk about football season being over and how much we love football. Hence, we've got a podcast. Most football fans want to see football 24/7 on their TVs, and the real losers for this are the wives and girlfriends who, want their partners back over the summer, want some family time. Forget that. We're football fans and we want it on all the time. So for me, this tournament has been brilliant where we normally would have, one game every 2 weeks, probably at, some ridiculous time of the day against a team that we don't really care about. And as we said earlier, just a team that's rotated, you get 20 off, 20, 20 subs at half time. It's a bit farcical. This has been, for the most part, good quality matchups that are proper competitive games because there's millions of pounds on the line. And I think it's been brilliant. I would always rather have competitive football over no football at all. So I think that has been one of the biggest pluses for me of the tournament so far.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's the competitiveness. If these games weren't taken seriously, I would be like scrap it because it's just a pre-season game. And to be honest, when I was watching one of the first few games, I was looking at it and it was like it just seemed a bit like a pre-season friendly because there wasn't the sort of amount of pressing that you'd normally get, say, in the Champions League, in the Premier League. But you do have to consider the heat out there, so you can't actually do that. But it doesn't mean it's not competitive. It's just a bit different to what we're probably used to. So yes, it's still competitive. I think if it wasn't competitive, you would there wouldn't I would struggle to defend the competition. And the pre-season games that normally go on, which you'll see other clubs do it who are not in this. Let's be honest, you don't really care. You'll be slightly embarrassed if you see your team lose to some random team you've probably never heard of. But at the end of the day, you'll look at the starting 11. It's got 8 academy players, 3 players out of position. It means nothing. It's just a fitness sort of regimen, and I'd like you say, sort of, I'd just rather see competitiveness. Or to be honest, for me, I'd rather see nothing at all. because I think the pointless sort of just going through the motions is a bit of a waste of our time watching. Whereas I want to see, you know, you got what was it, Dumfries and Acuna wanting to have a fight down the tunnel. It's there's that sort of fierceness about it. It's showing that the players care. Maybe not every single player, but that's never going to be the case anyway. There are players in the Premier League who don't enjoy football, so you're always going to get that. So I think when you have the competitiveness, it just helps so much with it.
Yeah, 100%. And then the games have been good. Players, you can tell players care about it. Look, some of the celebrations, some of the kickoffs, some, as you said, some of the fights. Like, of course they care. Um, all right, let's move on now. We've said all the good stuff. Again, people watching, if you do agree, disagree, hit us up in the comments. Let's talk about the ugly side of the Club World Cup. Reese, we'll come to you first. What have you hated about the Club World Cup so far?
I'd say hate is a strong word. I think the issue it's probably exposed, I think it's an issue that we all know exists, is the monopoly that Europe has on the global game. I know UEFA have probably been a bit negative about this tournament, but it's good for them that, of course, that their teams are look like they're through. I mean, what we've already got three European teams already into the quarterfinals. It likely going to be seven by the end of this round of play, with of course two of those even playing against each other. So we're guaranteed at least four in the quarterfinals. In comparison to, at the moment the only team not from Europe is Palmeiras that have qualified, showing the power, that maybe the quality, the economic resources that Europe has. Again, why would you try and change that if you're benefiting from it, right? That's genuinely what human nature is. However, it's just it then it just becomes, well, what's the point then? This is why we have a Champions League if it's just going to be European teams in it. It sort of makes the competition obsolete. I know it's the first one in this format, but I'd like to see more international or teams from outside of Europe showing what they're capable of, which they are. Um, and then what's probably going to happen? These teams will probably just sign those players. So it just repeats the cycle, and it just becomes pointless having the competition if only Europe are going to win it. And I don't want to see that. I'm not criticizing European football. I'm not criticizing UEFA or FIFA or whatever. It just goes to show the balance of play. The benefit is the money these teams get, the more they can improve their infrastructure. That's really important. Improve their facilities. And in order to get better players and not necessarily just have to sell to Europe. The game is changing. If there's one thing football fans hate is change. If this competition can grow, it has to allow all teams across the world to benefit from that financially. The money is unbelievable. Let these teams benefit from it. Let them grow. Let this become the competition it should be. But at the moment, it's clear that Europe has the monopoly. And if we get another couple of these where Europe dominate the quarters, semis, and finals, it's going to find itself people switching off. Yes, it's good because other countries get to see them play. But that's my biggest concern, and I want it to be addressed. And I hope that the money spreads out evenly and we see more competition and more players staying instead of just being sold at the earliest opportunity. But I understand football has changed.
Yeah, it takes time as well, right? Like it is going to take a long time for that to filter down. But I think for me to go against that, obviously, yes, the ultimately it's looking like the kind of semi-finals and finals will be European dominated. But to that point, it's not been a complete and utter one-way street. We've seen Botafogo, eighth in the Brazilian league, beat the Champions League winners. Like we can't say it's that uneven. Flamenco, a smaller Brazilian club, have beaten us. Porto have been beaten by everyone. There's numerous cases already in this tournament of upset, or you'd call them upsets based on people's perspective. But we are already seeing on an individual game basis, it's not just European domination. It is looking, as you said, in the knockouts, it probably will be that way. But I think over time that can change, especially with the prize money.
I hope it does. I think at the end of the day, what matters is the final and who wins it. And if it's only going to be European teams, we saw it with the original Club World Cup. When it was just, was it four or five, four teams or so? It was predominantly European dominated. I will give you a heads up now, Jordan. You are probably going to get targeted in the comments for your comment on Flamengo being a small club. They're the most supported club in Brazil,
Fully
and
intended.
they are a bigger side than Botafogo. In fact, they're probably, even though they're both from the same city, so do be careful there.
Enjoy the
But they
flight home,
did give you a
lads.
game.
Enjoy the
They
flight
did.
home.
They did give you a game. That's the important thing. They gave you a right old game, and I think that was very impressive to see. And it's we all know about Brazilian football. We all know about the national team that we all have loved over the years and the players we've had the joy of seeing. But the league is one of the most exciting in the world, and I'm glad to actually have seen it be put on the map a little bit more from this competition.
Yeah, I know Jordan was a bit salty with his comment, after the Flamengo's Twitter account absolutely crucifying Chelsea after that. Just a small town in London was one of the quotes from it, which was great to see. But
Yeah, they deserve everything they get.
in terms of the European domination, yes, you are going to get an odd result here and there, and you're going to get that in the World Cup when you know, you'll see some of the African teams win certain games that you don't expect them to. You had sort of like South Korea doing well. You've had, I think it's Saudi Arabia beat Argentina. So you will always get the odd games where you see teams that you don't expect beat giants of the sort of football or teams that should be winning in terms of sort of odds on. So you will get that problem. But when it comes down to the crunch of it, like we've said, we expect it to probably be an all European semi-finals, and obviously then it will be a final. That's where I agree with Reece. There could be a problem with that. You can't just have teams come in, winning an odd game, getting knocked out when it matters. Like saying Flamengo beat Chelsea, but Chelsea are through and Flamengo out. And they got a bit. I think they got a bit lucky because of Bayern Munich not winning the last game, where Chelsea would have played them, and they would have played Benfica. Doesn't mean they wouldn't have gone through or would have gone out at the same point. But that's sort of where that's where the domination sort of comes in, and that can be a problem. I think going forward.
Yeah, agreed. Let's kick off with another thing. I'll start with one I hate, and we saw it the other night. These bloody weather delays. Now, look, I know there's some things you can't control in football, and that is the weather, but I think there needs to be questions raised. I know it's too late. I'm not saying move the World Cup, but we have seen numerous ridiculous weather delays already in this tournament, which, if it's before the game, maybe you can understand. When it's mid-game, it becomes very silly and frustrating. And from my perspective, there was no better example than this the other day with the Chelsea Benfica game. 85 minutes in, we're 1-0 up, we're cruising, we're dominating, seeing out the game, and a weather delay comes in. Now, look, I'm not saying risk players and fan safety, obviously, but there's got to be a little bit of common sense when a game is 5 minutes from being completed. You know, I'm sure all of these official protocols will have adjusted some time from weather hitting to evacuation, right? It's not literally lightning hits and bosh, we're off. Like with these days, with not a weatherman by any stretch, but all these advanced systems, they pretty much know to the minute when it is actually going to rain or lightning or thunder, whatever it is. So I do get it. Do stadiums not have roofs? Like, you cannot be waiting for 2 hours for a game to play 4 minutes. It is absolutely ridiculous for the fans, for people watching, for the players. It's ridiculous. The Chelsea and Benfica players were on exercise bikes doing fitness for kicking it around. For 2 hours in a dressing room. It's just not acceptable, and I just think it ruins the whole tournament.
No, that is a fair point. You would think that if you could just call it off and play it the next day. This is experimental, obviously. I think places like Miami, etc., were chosen for a reason. Um, but the reality is maybe some in future, like this is still an experimental competition, right? There are 10 NFL stadiums that have some form of roof, fixed or retractable, which would have probably been more applicable. However, are they in the locations that probably the Club World Cup wanted, or were there other factors into that? Could we've had some games in Las Vegas, maybe Detroit, Arizona. I suppose they're just trying to fit them into the more populated areas, aren't they? Such as the East Coast. But California does have one, so I surprised it didn't go there for that. I agree though. I think it's a long time to call it off. That's not the ref's fault, and I think players' safety is important for these, but there needs to be more of a retractable roof. Most grounds have them around the world, or at least if the weather's going to be like that, they would abandon it. So I was a bit confused as the reasoning why, because that was a very long time, and with time zones, etc., which I know we'll go into, playing an effect on that. That's not good for the zone to lose all those viewers either. So there must be some way of addressing this potential issue in the future.
Tough for the pundits as well, by the way. They're just sitting there awkwardly for 2 hours waffling on about stuff that they know no one cares about. It's tough for them as well.
I do wonder. I don't know. Obviously, it's sort of like, is it a common occurrence for this time of year to have these weather issues? If it is, then it's a bit of a mistake to just go, let's have it there anyway. So that could play it. But then again, you can't predict the weather. Us in the UK, we're sweltering at the moment through the heat, but I couldn't have predicted that. You know what I mean? It's sort of like things happen and it's out of anyone's actual control. So I I get the point. It's so frustrating, especially with the Chelsea game. 5 minutes left. You just want the game to be done, especially Chelsea as they're 1-0 up. But the problem you had was possibly it's just people's safety. It's sort of like, let's say lightning came, someone got hit, God forbid. Then the narrative is the other way of, why did you not stop this game? You can
Yeah.
there's ways of finding out what the weather's going to do. That's why everyone got pulled off. It's got health and safety does have to come first. Unfortunately, as much as us watching the game on TV, it has to come first. Now, if you stayed up like you did, Jordan, fair play. I certainly didn't, but luckily for you, it was on a Saturday, not into my next point really of being on a Monday/Tuesday morning. So I'll get straight into it. The thing I hate about the World Cup is the times, and I know that's very selfish of me. But when City have got to play 2 a.m. in UK time for this next round against Al Hilal, it's sort of like I've got work the next day. If I want to stay up and it's kicking off at 2, that takes it to about 4 a.m. that I'm going to sleep, and I'm getting up in a few hours. It's just not plausible, and they're also talking about weather problems for that game. It'll probably still be going on by the time I'm going to work, possibly.
Set your alarm for 6 a.m.
If it's that bad, I might catch the end of the game by the time I wake up to go to work. So things like that, I know that's just a selfish point of view. You can't control the time zones, and everywhere should. It's sort of like the World Cup. Everywhere should be able to host it, and everyone should be able to see. It shouldn't just be selfish for European times, but it's something that is frustrating for it.
Yeah.
I think Jamie, you've just pretty much emphasized the point of why I say every football fan is what you call a hypocrite, right? Not you. I know you're not selfish, but every football fan wants it their own way. It's as simple as that, isn't it? Long story short, it's our club, but the manager should pay, the owner should pay for everything. How dare I have to pay anything? That sort of thing. And I agree. You want to play this around the world. You want to play it in different places. There's no point hosting it around the same few countries every single year. It's boring. That defies the point of a competition. America is the most powerful country in the world. It's a country that has a lot of potential. It has, of course, a lot of money. So it's going to go there. Yes, the time zones are not ideal. I'm sure Jordan can relate when we try and watch the PLEs for the wrestling, for example. We know that time zones factor into that. It is what it is. If everyone was on the same time zone, brilliant. But yes, these are small prices to pay. How do you think, maybe Americans that are huge football fans feel when they had to tune into the Qatar World Cup? Or when the World Cup was held in Japan and Korea. I remember getting up and having to watch it at like, what, 8 a.m. in the morning, 7 a.m. in the morning. Yes, that's not early for many people, but it's just one of those things. Every football fan should have an opportunity to experience it fairly. And that's how I see it. Yes, it's unfortunate that City are on at 2 a.m., but if you're a football fan, watch it. Pay the price when you get up and you don't have much sleep. It's as simple as that. That's my argument to it. I don't see what else they can do about the kickoff times, unless they do them at 9 a.m. in the morning. But what's the point in that then? We're either our time, we're going to work, or we're in the office. We're not going to be able to watch the game then. So they've tried to accommodate it around where a lot of us can watch it within the comfort of our own living rooms at the very least.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is all we have time for this episode. But as always, join in the debate in the comments. We want to hear from you. Is there anything we've missed? For example, attendances, referees, which we've not even discussed today. Let us know in the comments. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.